Frederick Brookhouse is here, Laura Belsky's here, John Morrissey's here, John Franco's here, Felix Garcia's here. Keith Gray and Aaron Carroll are not here as of yet. We also have Addie, Lenz, and Melanie. How do you say your last name?
Just how's like spell Jarzembowski.
Okay. So you're here.
Yes.
Right now, I'd like to turn it over.
Do we have another youth and governance? Or not?
I'm here. Clerical.
Claire, not part of our committee, but
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm Joe Potente, Communications Manager for the county. I think I know nearly all of you. The reason I'm here tonight is to provide a little tech assistance. That device you see in the middle of the table is a camera. And what we are doing, at the request of the county board chair, we are working to begin live streaming county board committee meetings through YouTube, the same way we have been doing full board meetings for some time. So we think we've worked out the technology to do that effectively and rather painlessly. This is kind of a test run. We did one at Public Works last week too. Once we know we have the bugs out, we will begin advertising this publicly. But Smile, you are on camera. This is actually being live streamed tonight. I think the only viewers will be the few people who know that right now internally. So
the only thing I would say too, that if you make any loud noises or shuffling, the camera will immediately go to you.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. If you're not familiar with the meeting owl, which I wasn't until recently, that's an omnidirectional camera at the top of it. And it will automatically direct itself to the area where the sound is coming from in the room. So I'm seeing myself right now. If Supervisor Morrissey were to say something, it would swing around that way. Sometimes if two people are talking at once, it'll kind of provide a dual screen view.
Wow.
It's not perfect, but it's pretty good, and it's better than having to have a person sitting there controlling a camera. So I don't plan to be here doing this every week, but I'm here to help our clerks get it off the ground. So Smile, you're on camera.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any citizens' comments this evening? Citizens' comments? Any citizens' comments? Seeing none, citizens' comments is closed. Are there any supervisor comments? Yes.
I just have a question on this. Is this going to replace the audio recording of the minutes? Is that the intent?
That is the intent.
Okay.
So there will be a playlist for each committee on the county YouTube channel. And you'll be able to find all the videos there live and after the fact. The old audio recordings will remain on the website, so you can still go back and listen to however many years ago there are. Going forward, once we're confident in this will be.
Okay. Thank you.
That's okay, guys. We have Supervisor Keith Gray and Supervisor Aaron Carroll here. We were just going over that now. All of our, just like in Public Works, all of our meetings will be live streamed, and we have the owl here.
Okay.
So tonight it's being live streamed. If you make any sudden noises or anything, the camera will swivel to you, just so you're aware. Okay, so we will get started. Any other supervisor comments? Okay. I need, there's no chairman comments tonight. I know that you're probably happy about that. Approval, I need approval from the minutes from June 5th.
I have a question.
Yes,
On the minutes, it said I was excused, but I was present last time.
on the minutes, so we will correct that. So Alyssa, can you correct the June 5th minutes to identify that Melanie was here?
Yes.
Okay, so with that adjustment, is there a motion to approve?
So move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
There's corrections need to be made.
With that correction, he said.
No, with more, there's more corrections.
Oh, there is more, okay,
Sorry.
all right.
So I believe on page 2, it says the approval of the minutes from my last meeting should have been May 8th. It says March 6th.
Mhm.
So I believe it's May 8th.
Okay.
And then just on my comments on page 2, I listened to the tape. I wanted to reflect, I said should not be publicly out there, in my opinion. The word not is missing
Okay.
under the certain things that should or shouldn't be released.
Okay. So, motion to amend the minutes as stated,
To accept the minutes.
to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
No,
Okay.
second.
I think this was under that we approved the minutes from the meeting prior to this one, because this one is here, that we're approving minutes from June 5th.
Right, that should have been to approve the minutes of May 8th, right? That would have been the meetings before, or at least that was,
Oh, okay, because
that's what the audio.
June
Okay,
5th
that makes
meeting.
sense.
Yep.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
So that was the amendments, or did we accept the amendments and then? we
As
the minutes?
stated, then it's approved.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, tonight I would like to present the clerk of courts, Rebecca Mateska Mentek.
Good evening. Happy birthday, America. I also have Brian Scheffler. He is the registrar and probate. He is one of the 3 managers within the circuit court system. So, I met with Supervisor Belsky, in June to discuss, bringing, more awareness of what we do over in the circuit court, and I happily, accepted her invitation, very excitedly. It was kind of difficult to pinpoint not being here for an hour and a half of the time. So tonight I want to talk about our court interpreter program, a little bit about our caseload, and some of the issues resolving about that. And I will gladly come back more frequently to discuss other issues such as our advocate council issues, more in-depth analysis on our criminal backlog, courtroom technology, which includes the OWL. We do have the OWL installed in 2 of our courtrooms. And it's a wonderful addition to our Zoom appearances. So, and then any other issues that you feel that you would like some more in-depth information on. So, our court interpreter, the reason I chose that is because there's some significant funding issues with that. This is one of the statutorily mandated services that the circuit court provides. And it was originally designed where the reimbursement would come back from the state of Wisconsin through the director's office, through the state budget, in its entirety to do that, to pay for the cost of our interpreters. And over the course of the years, that funding has not kept up, and it is now on the backs of our citizens and our budget. So there's some significant impact. So I provided some background in terms of what the statutes say. They mandate that we provide interpreters to litigants who cannot understand or communicate effectively in English. And we also do that for those who have speech impairments, hearing loss, deafness, deaf and blindness, and other disabilities similar to that. And we have to provide interpreters for any party of interest in a case. So if you're a plaintiff or a defendant or a respondent in an action, you are allowed to have an interpreter and not understand the English language. Any witness during their testimony while they're on the stand is allowed to have an interpreter. Any alleged victim throughout the course of the proceedings, they are also allowed. A parent or a legal guardian who cannot understand English if their minor child is involved in the action, or if they are somehow brought into the action as a guardian. And then any other person that the judge might determine is necessary to the case to understand. We also provide ASL sign language interpreters for any juror appearing. So just we are inclusive in that, but we do not provide any other level of interpreter for jury. And again, because of these interpreters, we are actually accruing costs associated with that, and we cannot get that reimbursed from a party. So if you don't show up for court or a hearing gets adjourned or whatever, the county is still online for paying that interpreter. The state does define what a qualified interpreter is, and I've listed some of the languages that we use. Obviously, Spanish is our #1 user in our court system here. So we do get some level of reimbursement, but we also use contracted interpreters. Some of the counties across the state have employed full-time interpreters as their staff interpreters. But the number of cases and courts that we have to cover, I'm not sure that that would be an appropriate return on investment for that level of commitment to one individual. It's not like one individual, just because I have them here 40 hours, can be in 8 different courts scheduled at the same time. Our court system does use block scheduling. So our 4 criminal courts, who are the biggest users of interpreters, we tried to schedule all Spanish-speaking cases within different blocks to maximize the use of the interpreters. However, based on attorney availability, litigant availability, and other time limits, sometimes we do have to go outside those blocks. There's a jury trial going on. We have criminal intake every afternoon at 1 o'clock. So again, they can't be in place, all places at the same time, but we work very closely on monitoring how to best use their time and resources efficiently. So the state also sets the level of reimbursement. I did provide on the second page the level of reimbursement that was provided by the state. That's in the second column of interpreter revenue, and that's what we've received as part of our grant process. There's a base level of $1,000 per circuit court branch by county, and that's so we would get $8,000 right out of the bat. We get actual 100% reimbursement for any of the mileage that an interpreter charges us, but that's just the mileage. Most of our interpreters will charge us the travel time as well. We only have 1 local Spanish-speaking interpreter, and the others are a minimum of an hour away. So most of their travel time is 2 hours, and we do get billed additionally for that. Kenosha County does have a higher than 70% use of certified interpreters. So we do get a $3,500 premium as part of our package. And then from that entire state bucket, it's allocated across all 72 counties. And that's based on some level of determination made by the state based on the hours reported in court. The state, however, uses a $40 an hour rate. All of our interpreters charge a minimum of at least 60, if not 70 or more per hour. But again, as they determine how the rest of that bucket is disseminated throughout the state, they do use that $40 base level. And as you can see, over the course of the years, the reimbursement from the state has never exceeded the expenses paid. And again, I want to remind everyone that reimbursement from the litigants is not allowed. So that's kind of a brief synopsis on any of the interpreter issues. I'll take any questions on that if you have any.
So,
Go ahead.
So if it's a civil case between private parties, we taxpayers have to pay for those interpreters as well?
Yes, yes, that law changed maybe around 2018, but again, I'm guessing because it feels like yesterday, but yet it feels very long ago. So probably around 2018, when the funding formulas, they mandated that any type of case, litigant should have equal access to the justice system.
And I think, and I could be mistaken here, that the municipal judge had told us that if it's going to be after a certain number of hours, they were required to have at least 2 interpreters.
It depends on the interpreter, but yes, so for jury trials, we automatically schedule 2 so that they can tag team in and out. So it's kind of a unique system because in the course of testimony, you'll just get that little tap and they'll stop the sentence and they'll switch out, and it's really
But we're
unique.
paying for both of those at the
Correct.
same time, so I mean, it's
Yeah.
more than, I just wanted to ensure it's more than just having 1 interpreter there.
Yes, and then we have jury trials scheduled throughout the year, and as they're Spanish speaking, we try to schedule them as soon as possible because there's a shortage of interpreters throughout the state of Wisconsin. Hence their ability to increase their rates. They have minimum rates, 4-hour minimums, plus their travel time, plus one of the interpreters won't, or prefers not to do one certain type of court and says if I'm gonna be scheduled on Thursday mornings in this court, I'm charging you $300, not a base 300, not just the 260 minimum. So they have us kind of over a boat barrel in that regard. So they're really lead driving us. The state sets no set rate, like we are only allowed to pay, or the base rate for like advocate counsel and attorneys is $100 an hour. The state has really stayed neutral. The statutes are very, are silent on that hourly rate.
Anything else?
Just one more question, because I don't know if it happens. Is there video conferencing in cases in circuit court? And if so, do we have to provide interpreters for that? I don't know if that's allowed or not.
Yes, so some judges, and some courts do allow for video conferencing. And yes, we do have to provide interpreters for that. Other counties have a significant use of video interpreting too. So where the interpreter is appearing by Zoom as well. However, that doubles the length of the hearing because it can't be simultaneously done. So if we're all in person, the interpreter sitting right next to the litigant's ear and interpreting in their ear. But if it's Zoom, it's done piecemeal, talk, interpret, talk, interpret, talk, interpret. So you're literally doubling the length of the hearing. So, again, given our backlog, which I'll get to in a little bit, and an efficient use of actual court time.
So we don't have video interpreters.
We can, but that happens rarely.
That's it. Thank you.
So that I understand, the state set, we have a statute that says they must be paid $40 minimum.
No, the statute is silent on that, but they've used the $40 an hour rate for a number of
Or
years.
for the reimbursement.
Yes.
And is there any way to have that looked at? Do we need to contact our
The
representative?
So the Clerks Association has been very vocal on that. The Director of State Courts Office in the grand scheme of things is looking at that too. And again, even if and yes, it's fine to contact the legislature. However, it's bigger than just saying, representative, please look at this, because it's run through this Director of State Courts Office, and they have many issues that they look at, and the interpreting piece is a small piece.
So they're mandating this practice, but yet they're not paying for it.
Yes, it's many of the unfunded mandates.
Okay,
Just like the jury fee is only at $16 per day, which hasn't been increased in
wow.
decades. And, but it's hard to advocate to increase that at the county level, because then it impacts our budget too, because that's paid for by the county.
Right.
So I'm glad
It's
to
a
have.
puzzle.
Yes, I'm glad I believe the circuit court system impacts so many different pieces on so many different levels across the county and across the state that it really is very, very tentacly.
Any other questions on this segment?
I want to go back to, funding issue from the state. They used to do it. And if you believe the papers, there was a surplus last year in the state, right?
So the only money we get from the state is through the director's office. So there can be all this bonuses and all this extra money or whatever, and it's what is allocated to the director's office.
Okay. Well, it seems like a state representative would be able to help in our situation. Kenosha County probably has 3 or 4 state reps in the county.
I think they're up for reelection too.
Yeah.
It'd be a good time
This is
to
a topic.
bring them in. Yeah.
But I do not want to speak for the director's office, but the Clerks Association
Sure.
has been really bringing their ear on the issues of increasing the level of court funding.
Well, and I'm also looking at it from the perspective that our county taxpayers are having to fund these services. So, I'll reach out to some representatives and see if we can't get
I'll
them
do the
in.
same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions after this segment? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next 3 pages are on our caseload analysis. Of primary interest right now is our criminal cases. And you may have heard that perhaps across the state, and I don't have any of the data on this, but I'm told that across the state, criminal charging is down. Their new criminal cases are down. However, with Kenosha being on the border, we've seen increases in that. And there's been significant increase since COVID, and it really hasn't tracked down. Everybody had experienced that 2-year post-COVID issue, but we didn't see that stabilization after that 2 years of people returning to normal. So again, in Kenosha, we are tracking up on the felonies. Our misdemeanors are tracking downward, but misdemeanors don't take up as much court time. The majority of our trials are felony cases. At the bottom of that first page, the number of jury trials over the course of years is listed, and I may have messed up. The 57 is 22, or for 2022, there's 57, but in 2021, there was 22. And in 2020, there was 55, 2019, 50. So
At the very bottom of the page,
Oh,
on this page right there.
yes.
Okay.
So if you look across the numbers, it's 24, 23, 22, 21. Don't look up at the column numbers. So again, with the increase in the rise of felonies, we have four branches of court that 100% deal with criminal cases. 2 years ago, we were at 3.5. 2 years ago, the judges decided that we needed an additional criminal half branch to bring it up to 4 judges fully devoting all their docket time to the criminal cases. However, we have not been able to keep up with that for a myriad of issues. It's very multifaceted in terms of why we have a backload. You've heard, perhaps you've heard District Attorney Gravely talk about the courtroom technology and all the video evidence that has occurred. That increases the amount of time that attorneys have, district attorneys and the defense counsel have to review all of that video evidence. And it's probably more important on a defense attorney to review all of it just to make sure that something wasn't missed. So that's probably doubling, the amount of time that they have to schedule on a case. Kenosha County is also seeing a decrease of about 10% in practicing attorneys. That was a statistic put out by the State Bar Association. And that's not including those attorneys who are still licensed and still in good standing, but are choosing not to take any cases whatsoever. They go into pre-retirement or they keep their license active just in case. And that also includes our retired judges in the community. So that's in that mix of active attorneys. So there's a decrease across the state of Wisconsin. That has all trended as well too. So you have fewer attorneys able to take the criminal cases. Our public defender's office has difficulty appointing attorneys on cases. That extends the preliminary hearing status out by sometimes 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. We recently ran a report and there's some people sitting in jail for a period of 9 months who are still waiting appointment of an attorney. So it's really this big issue because there's a jail impact too. But you can't force an attorney to take a case. You don't want to do that for a number of reasons. So again, it's multifaceted and from where I sit, and this is just my opinion, it's not because we don't have hardworking judges. We have 8 very hardworking judges, 3 court commissioners, and they all have extremely busy dockets. And when they're not on the bench, they are reviewing case law and briefs, and the amount of paperwork that is that's coming in is just phenomenal. So it's not because they're hardworking or they're letting cases languish or anything like that. So I want to be very clear that that wouldn't be one of the issues. And my staff can attest to the fact that we're still processing cases and we're all very busy. So that I could give you my opinions on why these trend and stuff like that, but I really don't want to focus on my opinions because that's just me. But if you have any questions, I'll be either glad to share my opinion with you or, to discuss this
How
further.
much do appointed public attorneys get paid?
$100 an hour for public defender and for advocate counsel. So advocate counsel is when the court determines you so the public defender, in order to be appointed a public defender, you have to be declared indigent. If you're not declared indigent, but you still can't afford an attorney, then the county appoints an attorney for that individual. And we pay the county pays them $100 an hour. But we are able to go after the defendant for reimbursement of those fees at the end, and that's for all of our collection
If the case
processes.
is settled in favor of
No,
either way.
either way.
What's your success rate on collection?
We, 2.5 years ago, we began the process of referring all of our old debt over to state debt collection, and we are receiving phenomenal increases on that. I talked about that last year during our budget presentation, because our numbers had gone up. And we're still trending in that direction. But it's because we're capturing all the old debt that sat and languished in a collection agency. State debt collection has a much bigger hand in it. And if we could start capturing federal tax refunds, that would just significantly increase too, as you can imagine. So it's hard. I can't say like, oh, we're successful on 60%. The county tax dollars are secondary to any amounts of restitution. So victims in restitution on a hierarchy of things get paid first. And then sometimes based on the manner in which our debts are presented, we could fall further down on state debt collections agency hierarchy requirements.
So
I
most
feel- go ahead.
is most of that on the tax intercept program is where we're
We've always done tax intercept on the civil judgments. But those rank lower on that hierarchy. State debt collection ranks higher. So if you are a defendant with multiple cases across the state, those would get paid ever before we could ever touch it. But now that there was with SDC, our debt is now bypassing other counties who aren't with them.
So
And other.
what debt is the state collecting on? What are they taking from the defendant up?
They
Other than tax intercept?
They can levy bank accounts.
Okay.
Because we've done income withholding as part of our collection efforts too, but that just means that someone will job hop, and we don't have the resources to find out where people are working. It's by happen chance if we happen to find out. You come in and enter a payment plan with us, voluntary payment plan. We ask for your employer and then you default on that. Well, then we'll send a wage assignment out, But again, if they're paying child support and all of those other parameters fall in, we're not going to collect any either.
Any other questions? I still think this would look good on a debt.
That piece I don't mind because
Yeah.
there's not much to read and
There's not left to interpretation.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Staffing, Supervisor Belsky also asked about our staffing levels, and those are the last 2 pages. Those I took from the budget book, because I think it's a clear delineation of how we are. If you compare my hierarchy to other departments, you're going to see that we do the most with the least amount of management and supervision. We have a court services manager and fiscal services manager, and then our register and probate. The register and probate is a judicial appointment. He has also accepted additional duties as the juvenile clerk of courts, another appointed position. And he oversees his office staff. But because Brian's such a good guy, he really steps up to where I consider him one of our managers. And I think, thank God for that, because that means that me, Bethany, and Tammy can actually take off on the same day. And he is the one left, he is the manager in charge on site. Because there's so much that can go on in that building, we always try to have one of us four on site. Imagine in managing 11 courtrooms, that can be significant. And then we basically have three levels of staff. We have the judicial assistants, which are assigned to a judge or a court commissioner. We have our deputy court clerk seniors, which is the majority of the staff there. And then we have a couple of deputy court clerks. Those are our entry level positions that run our counter and man our phones. And trust me when I say that my counter positions are probably the least favorite position, where everyone in that courthouse would say, you couldn't pay me enough to have that job. They deal with the public, they take people's monies, they're dealing with very angry individuals. So they might be at the entry level, but I don't know how you put that level of forward-facing public exposure into a job study.
I absolutely agree with you. When I went, if you, please take the tour, she'd be happy to take you on a tour. Please see what this group does. The amount of work and the interactions and the areas of responsibilities where you have 43 staff.
40, I think.
Yeah, so just imagine, and then I would challenge any of you to spend an hour working that front information booth, the area that they're in, first of all. Second of all, they're not considered management, it's entry level. They're dealing with people that are truly irate. I've stood in line behind some of the people. Personally, I think these job descriptions, we need to look at them. And we need to ask Clara Tappa from HR to come in so that we understand why are they categorized at the level that they're at. Because I don't view that as entry level. You have to know quite a bit. And
they're entry level to circuit court. They are like a levels, I want to say 7.
I know, but I still don't think it's commensurate to what they're doing. Because they make a lot of decisions too.
Yeah, well, and they provide a lot of information. So if you come in as, say you got an offender vendor and it's $1,500, you want to file a small claims action because they were uninsured. You're going to come in, you're going to say, I don't know what to do. What do I do? And they actually have to know, okay, here are the forms. We can't provide legal advice, but you know how it's that fine line when you're answering someone's questions. We can't tell you where to file or who to file, but they have to know that process. Same thing, they have to know processes on so many different things, on family, on make sure that they know where to go, even on criminal cases. Sometimes you come in and going, I don't understand what these minutes say, and again, a lot of it is in the semantics of it all. Okay, I don't know how to fill out this form. Okay, well, it does say put your name here. I can't tell you to put your name here, but it does say put your name here. You might want to consider, doing this, but again, even consider, I feel comfortable saying that, but I would never direct my staff to say that. But there are times when it's just like, you just really want to help these individuals and, and you're butted up against that wall on the legal advice. So,
and
they
you're
know
2
that.
people in that position, correct?
Correct. Plus I have, but the seniors are down in the probate office and family office that deal as well. But my 2 counter people are the deputy court clerks.
And they get the majority of the people coming in and
They have the
asking for
face-to-face.
copies or whatever it might be.
Face-to-face contact,
Mhm.
yes. So like I said, I can't say enough about that. We just had a retirement on one of those positions. And I don't know what's appealing about circuit court more so now than it was a year ago, but we had over 80 applicants. We probably seriously reviewed 30 of those applications. And we're in the hiring, and that we'll be starting the interview process on that. So it was nice because during COVID and post-COVID, we were getting maybe 10 applicants for a position, and the training curve lengthened, and now our last few postings, that the number of that pool is just quadrupled. And it's just, I don't know if it's a post-COVID recovery or if people realize that the county is a great place to work, which it is, and that the circuit court's even a better one.
Do you also look at people working the counter being bilingual?
We try to do that in many of our staff. It is one of the areas that I consider a weakness in my department. Because even though I can't pay them an interpreter wage, that conversational Spanish does assist litigants in helping. Right now, we have one who is very conversational. She's not comfortable. For the most part, she will do her best, but she's also personally striving to learning more of the lingo associated with that. But then I worry about losing her to the interpreter pool, but that's,
Right.
yes, we need you as an interpreter, but we love you as an employee. That would be a nice problem to have.
Mhm. And I think for the 40+ staff that you have, we've only touched very briefly on what your area does.
Correct.
Because otherwise we'd be sitting here for a long time tonight. So I'm gonna ask her to come back and we'll focus on another area, and we'll probably do that in September for quarterly reports.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
if you want
And
to,
I wouldn't mind August, or no, September would be, yeah.
August, you're,
Be prior, yes, and prior to the budget in
Yeah.
in October too, so.
yeah,
But yes, and I'm always available by email to answer any questions. I'm more than welcome the tours and spending time with us. And I can modify that to areas of interest. When I spoke with you at the tour, I indicated the doors are open. I believe you are, we have a day later this month. And so it's exciting. You can tell how excited I am about what we do. It's unfortunate we have job security in that building. But it's a great place. We do good work. We have some amazing employees and staff and judges and all of our counterparts too. Again, I'll resurface back to how the courts are impacted by every county department as well too. From human services, juvenile intake, the DA, facilities, finance, personnel. There really isn't, and even highways will come by. They helped us during, as we prepared for the Rittenhouse trial and in response to the riots and protests. And, so there's not a department that the circuit court does not work with. So
what I found very impressive is I was not aware that you had responsibility for providing administrative services to the court, to the judges, that you oversee that as well. So, and I was gonna schedule for our group to go through, but they're in a very limited space. It wouldn't be conducive to us all being together. And Becky and Brian said that they would be very happy if you have some free time individually to take you through. And I would highly, highly suggest it. Yes,
So none of your positions are funded by the state at all? These
Well,
these
the
43
court
positions?
support grant that gives an allocation to to each individual county every year, but it doesn't touch that. We do provide a report to the state of Wisconsin to the director's office annually about all the expenses associated with running the court, and it's just not like the staffing and that administrative, but we pull in the facilities piece, the electric, the water, the upkeep, the renovations, courtroom technology, and all those other pieces that even though they're in other department budgets, that they are funding the court system.
This is more just a general question. You talked about this criminal courts. And this is probably more a question for the judges, but more complaints I hear are based on the probate and the civil courts are backed up longer and it seems to take through. Is that your
Well,
opinion? You said I could ask your opinion.
Um. Yes and no. Um. I don't believe probate court is necessarily all that backed up. You're gonna find a case or two that get hung up because of, and Brian can attest to this better than I can. He is the register there. But where there's an issue on the estate that's hanging it up, or an error or contest or something like that. So it's not uncommon to have probate cases that are a few years old. Same thing on the civil side, on a medical malpractice case. Those typically are years old because as they're going through depositions and discovery and all of those issues, those are gonna come out. And then when you have two very good attorneys on it, their schedules are packed, so try to get a mutually agreed upon trial date too. Those are scheduled out because the civil court is where one of the decreases in what a judge does happened when we turned over to the criminal court. But because the criminal court impacts so many other places, livelihood, the sheriff's department, social services and all that our focus came back to the criminal area. There are a lot of resources put into the termination of parental rights cases where the county funded a DA position so we could get those cases resolved and decrease the impact on the family and on the human services budget. But again, which judges were doing those cases? It was a civil judge. So that decreased the amount of time that they had to do the trials too. So it's not like if you hear complaints, you really have to take a look at it in a holistic manner that would you be complaining that you're sitting 6 months in jail because you can't get an attorney? Or that your divorce trial because you can't agree on how to separate, furniture. So like I said, you have to look at it holistically. And when someone's complaining about why a case is taking so long, you really have to look at that individual case and see if I don't believe that it's just a judge knocking it down the line.
Becky.
I don't either. I just wanted to hear it from you again. When I went through with the adoption for my kids, it was very quick, but that's one of the things I do hear is that particular court is very slow.
The private adoptions, I think are quicker within the statutory timeframes. But the juvenile court piece was slow, prior to getting the TPs under control. And I think, I don't want to speak for the DA's office, but I believe that he's back to like thinking that they're tracking appropriately. The other thing is 10 years ago, reunification wasn't necessarily, the norm. Again, this is me speaking. And so over the course of the years, that mindset has shifted to reunification being the goal here. And reunification sometimes takes a long time as opposed to 20 years ago. And it was like, oh, you're a bad parent and we're just going to go straight down to terminations.
No criticism was meant. I just, like I said, that's what I hear out there.
You can always reach out to me if there's specific cases and I'll try to either defend or go, maybe on that one. But again, I'm never going to go against how a judge determines on how to run their caseload. But I see it. I still go into the courtrooms. I'm still managing the caseloads and oversight on that. And I'm just not seeing it. It's not like the judges aren't working.
Something that will be coming up at budget time that you need to be aware of is the remodeling, is that what you call it? Rehabilitation?
Restoration.
Restoration.
I always got to search.
Yeah,
that one.
the restoration of the main courtroom. It's quite beautiful. And it's quite sad to see the changes that were made to it. But please do yourself a favor and visit that courtroom. Again, Becky, Brian, any one of the staff can take you in. And when it's not being used, right?
Well, as long as they're open hearings, we can, if you just want to look at it and not talk, we can go in.
But take a look at it, see what's all involved, understand what the project is about, understand where funding is coming from. coming from and what may be required of the county. I think it's important to understand that before we go into budget season.
As long as you segued into that, I'm gonna go into that piece too. So, when I first took office 18 years ago, there was no set schedule on how, courtrooms were addressed. About 6 years in, our IT department said, we have to get you on some type of a schedule to upgrade your audio systems. And there was increases in technology about 12 years ago. And we just started being purposeful in how we plan that. And we had them on a rotation basis. And we've pretty much updated all of the courtrooms, including our commissioner level courtrooms over the course of the time because of that regiment. About 7 years ago, I talked to facilities and they believe that that should occur too, because we had some significant needs in courtrooms. Carpet needed to be replaced. So if you're replacing carpet, are you looking at other issues? We had some older courtrooms. So we wanted to be a little methodical on how we address that instead of, oh, we're going to put all the carpet in the courtrooms. We're not going to address the paint or the furniture or anything like that. So we started with that. We upgraded, we remodeled the courtroom by Judge Milosauskas, which is right off the lobby, our branch 4 courtroom. And then we did the 209, 205 courtroom, which was occupied by Judge Bastianelli at the time and is now occupied by Judge Wilk. It was Judge Wagner's outgoing courtroom as well too. And so they went in and they redid the jury area and made that having accessible kitchenette facilities, and touched things up as they needed. That particular judge's bench, the judge who was in the courtroom when they designed it, was a sailor, and he had a desk that was tilted on like a 30-degree angle. And so if you put a stack of files or paper on it, it would just go down. I never understood how that worked. So we had to replace that. And there's just certain upgrades, especially in order to protect the tables. We barcoded furniture to prevent the briefcases from rubbing across. So we did 2 of those courtrooms and we were on schedule to do a 3rd. And then the ceremonial courtroom restoration project popped and we're like, okay, let's start putting our resources there. So it's been 4 years that we haven't done a major courtroom remodel. And it's probably going to be another 2 or 3 before we can go to the next one. So in the meantime, we're still continuing to, kind of piecemeal the needs, replacing the chairs and things like that. But the courtroom technology in the last 2 years, every courtroom has been upgraded on their AV system to allow for digital electronic recording or audio recording of the hearings. That was mandated by the state of Wisconsin. Our ceremonial courtroom is the only courtroom that doesn't have it, but it's still mandated by the state. We just begged for some time to join up with this project. So even if only that, the ceiling gets redone, we still have to address that digital audio recording piece. So thank you for letting me segue into that long story of, at the end of the day, this, incorporating this project, we also have to deal with some of the technology issues in there too.
Because it is mandated.
Yes.
And I
Yes,
think
and
it's
that's because we don't have any more real live, they aren't live, stenographic court reporters.
Mhm.
They're all becoming digital audio recorders. So
What's the status of the funding for the ceremonial courtroom?
outside of my pay grade.
Oh,
That's done by a separate group,
okay.
a fundraising group. And that's to restore the skylight up on top. But everything else we have to do in that courtroom to bring it up to code. But not the ceiling. The ceiling is a separate project. So if you're not aware of it, who could they reach out to?
Frank Martinelli,
Yeah, Frank Martinelli. You
and
could,
Joe, I don't know if you're in touch with that either.
I know enough
Heard
to
of
be
Frank?
dangerous, but
Yeah.
Frank is a better authority.
Yeah.
right. So if you want to learn more about the project before budget time, I think that would be important.
Without speaking too much out of school, and I may, but they are seeking quotes and estimates on doing that full courtroom remodel. That includes everything but the ceiling as well too, because that that courtroom's gonna be down for 1 to 2 years, realistically, and from where I sit. And not to do everything else that's needed in terms of the furniture repairs, carpeting, flooring, and all those other things. It seems very inefficient not to incorporate that at the same time. So, again, I know they're seeking quotes on that, and where they take it after those quotes come in is a different story. But, eventually it's gonna need to be done, and if it's not gonna be done with that courtroom, then I will need a different courtroom done. Go ahead.
For those who haven't seen that space. I mean, if you haven't been in there, you really should look at it, because what they've done is this beautiful ceiling with a skylight, the original building. And then sometime in maybe the 70s, 60s, it came in there and put heating ducts, covered that off, and then put drop ceiling on top of that thing. They turned it into,
And it's stained glass that's up there.
it's it's important to see what they're trying to do.
It's beautiful. I can geek out on that all day long about talking about what they did to that room and how beautiful it can be. I've toured courthouses across the nation, and many are older than ours, and they've just been able to restore some that incurred not as significant of damage, but
I know the Jeffries Foundation had a matching fund, and the group did meet their goal for Jeffries to match it, but I couldn't speak any more than that to it, so.
so thank you for your support and thank you for your time. And
Any other questions?
I do have one. So sorry, I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but you talked about a good pool of candidates that you've been able to enjoy in the recent time for job applications. So of the positions that you have, are they all full right now currently?
except for the one where we just add the front counter that retired last
Okay.
month.
So over the last, say, 4 or 5 years, when the caseloads have trended up, have you been down any staff, or have you been fully staffed over that time period?
Since COVID, I think maybe at the most we were down 3. At the most. However, at one point, we had a lot of new, where we were fully staffed, but they were new. We turned over our entire finance team in the last 5 years. When I say our entire finance team, I mean from our accountant to all the fiscal people outside of the counter, which is also kind of pieced into that fiscal piece too, because they do money. But we turned that over. And so the fact that we're at the level of our state debt collection area is pretty significant, because to be in that fiscal piece, and they're deputy court clerk seniors, so we can't even like attract it by saying, oh, this is an accounting associate. You don't have that pull on the public side of bringing in people with a finance background. That was probably our biggest area, and then our family court as well too. But we've always been able to manage. I have 18 years of experience plus my background. Bethany Lofgren, our financial services manager, has been with the county for over 35 years. Court services manager, Tammy Lima, she was a judicial assistant prior to becoming a court services manager. So we are able to get hands in. I've been in courtrooms, I've clerked, I can docket, I can index. Because, so we've always been able to fill in those cracks. But long answer, yes, for the most part, we have been very close to staff.
For some of these key positions that people maybe have been with the county for a long time, which is great. But, looking forward a year, 2 years, 3 years, there's probably going to be some retirements in those positions. Are you doing anything to cross-train or to be able to bring people in to get them trained up, which may require to increase the amount of staff for a little bit to handle those transitions? Is that being any thought or consideration for that, or how can, how does that impact the budget, and, and should that be planned for?
always looking for that. So the fact that we've been able to bring in people between the financial services and the court services manager piece, I'll focus on them. The financial services piece, Bethany had worked her way up from an entry level accounting all the way up. And we're trying to do that within the department.
Promote from within.
Yes. However, sometimes perhaps the accountant doesn't want to go into that. Well, I'm not going to displace a good accountant so that I can bring up a different level. I am exploring very heavily at this point in time about some mid-level or supervisory positions, or at least lead workers, which would have a smaller initial impact on the budget rather than making them our salary and supervisory positions. For the most part, we are an 8 to 5 organization. You'll see us there before 8, 7, 7:30 and earlier, and sometimes after 5. But for the most part, you know, the lead positions probably would glean into that a little better than supervisory at this part. This point.
Okay.
I've turned over a number of court services manager. The one that I inherited, he retired, he gave me 2 years and then retired. And then the next gentleman was with me for 5 and then went to the federal court system. And then the next individual was with me for 7. And she left, she lives out of county, so she went closer to home, and now I'm on to Tammy. So the positions are, you know, you don't always have to promote from within. Sometimes it's a bonus. But sometimes working from within, you don't want to deal with the things that we have to deal with too. So it's a double-edged sword. But I will never deny an individual an opportunity for growth. We've had individuals leave either the county or the court system to other departments to grow. Laura Irvin, who's the child support manager, was a judicial assistant with the circuit court prior to that. So we try to.
When is the last time that your job classifications were reviewed?
A couple years
And
ago.
staffing levels?
The staffing levels, I tend to review every year. And when the state mandated electronic filing, we thought that was going to be a time saver because you didn't have to manually index everything. It was just taken in electronically. However, there's issues with electronics that have kind of filled in that gap, and we still have many paper files that we're still backloading in as well. So in terms of staffing levels, I'm kind of comfortable with. I'm never gonna decline a position. We do have 2 positions that have been classified as temporary employees since prior to my beginning as clerk. And I've asked through a number of budget cycles to make them permanent. Those are scanning positions. And that's a truly entry-level position because you're scanning the documents, becoming familiar with the files.
But you're doing it in order. It isn't somebody just haphazardly running documents.
Yes, exactly.
But with regard to classification, is that something that you would be interested in having HR look at again?
When they did it 2 or 3 years ago, we were comfortable with it. Clara has a good relationship with the court. So anytime that we have to reconsider that, like I said, the only ones that I worry about is my counter positions, because but it's still going to be like, you're going to come in, you're going to learn that job, but you're going to want to go on to one of the desk jobs, not that front counter. So, so in the hierarchy, you have the judicial assistants and then the deputy court clerk seniors, but the majority of the deputy court clerk seniors don't necessarily want to become a judicial assistant and spend all that time in court. So even though there's a progression in the pay grades, doesn't always mean that you want to go into the next one either.
Okay. So customer service is important. So like you mentioned that desk job is important, but just curious is there any sort of, you talked about some additional time being required to manage the electronic side of life from the paper side of life. Is there any sort of technology or that you know of, or that, through the Clerks Association that maybe we don't have, but we should, to help, with anything, or?
Not really on that, because the state tries to run all the counties uniformly when it comes to the court system records. So they supply us with our digital audio recording equipment. They're the database manager for CCAP. So all of that is run through them. They give us our computers, our monitors, scanners. They manage the servers and all the information we have in there. I don't have to be selective on what records I keep in that court file. I know the DA, I don't know if you've ever talked to the DA's office, but they have to determine whether or not they're keeping a letter in their case file or they're accepting and rejecting. The DAIT side has their own standards on what you can keep on that. So in terms of anything to speed us, to make us quicker in terms of technology on the clerk side, trying to think outside the box, but
I'm just asking.
yeah.
You know, things change pretty frequently now and there's a lot of interesting things. I'm not familiar with
Right.
the court system or the judicial system, so.
No, I, you know, and I'll
Which is a
defer,
good thing, by the way.
you know, I want to say that techie wise, we kind of have what we need to do our job.
Are you utilizing AI at all?
No, I don't feel there's a need to it. And then, yeah, because we're taking what you say and we're putting a synopsis and throwing it into the record. You know, we're processing documents, we're talking on the phone to people, you know, emails. Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how that morphs down onto the clerk side, but that'll be ever evolving.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really
Thank you for the
appreciate it.
job well done, both of you.
Thank you. See, if I had planned more, I'd be to keep. So again, thank you, and feel free to reach out. And again, we're more than happy to do the tours and.
We'll sync up then for September.
Okay, fantastic.
And if there's anything specific any of you would like to learn more about, just let me know so we can make sure it gets on the agenda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy Fourth.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, everyone.